Okay, so just to pick up what I was saying there, I was talking about true independence comes from, it's a struggle for sovereignty, isn't it? And that's what the British Brexiteers, English nationalists are saying. They want to be sovereign, etc., and they want independence. That's what every culture, the Irish was saying against the British. My analysis of sovereignty goes back to my studies of political philosophy, Thomas Hobbes. Before him, Jean Baudin, a French philosopher, who invented or developed the idea of sovereignty. True sovereignty is about plugging your mind and your behaviour patterns and your work into the sovereign. The true sovereign is God or the divine, going back to my enlightenment position, right? So it's that future sovereignty when we all reach that Godhead, if you want, which is implicit in the human project. That's what we're here for. Nationhood is just a vehicle to enable us to do that. And the more civilized the nation that we are able to craft lovingly through our collective karma, and this goes back to karma, enables more enlightened souls to reach enlightenment more quickly. That's a good nation. So Bhutan, they talk about the gross national happiness of the people. I would like the nations of the world to be much more interested in the gross national happiness and the enlightenment quotient. Now, I would say that the Irish independence struggle was premised on that. These were fiercely intellectual and profoundly spiritual people trying to get cultural independence from this British arrogance that seemed to think it had the right to go around the world shooting and enslaving and determining people's futures, and then calling that democracy. It was a struggle for spiritual sovereignty with its own Godhead, with its own source mind, if you want. And I think that's what the European Union at its best is going to try and do, is trying to do for all the European nations. We're all equally sovereign. I mean, I have friends in all European nations, and they're all beautiful, but just in different ways. I want to mention the Welsh dimension to this because I lived in Wales for 10 years and I'm a great lover of Welsh identity, and I was saddened when Welsh vote sort of went very slightly in favour of leave, and I think it was not a true reflection of the actual Welsh true identity, and I think if there was a second referendum, as I hope, I think they'll vote to remain. I've worked a lot in Wales. I trained as a secondary school teacher there. I know quite a lot about Welsh history and culture, and if you go back to the ancient roots of Welsh identity, it's very European. I mean, the Celtic traditions of Wales have resonances. I've worked at the Institute of Advanced Celtic Studies in Aberystwyth, where the National Library is, and the Institute of Advanced Celtic Studies, they're finding echoes and commonalities with the Gauls, with the people of Galicia in northern Spain, with the Celtic tribes of the Danube and Austria and so on. They were part of a pan-European people. And if you look at the earliest bards, Taliesin, the first bard of Britain, the poetry he comes with from where I used to live in Powys, near Llanfairpwllgwyngyllgogerynion, where he was born, it's cosmic in its profundity. This is a Upanishads put into Welsh. He's stumbling into a cosmic enlightenment experience when he is chased by Ceridwen for taking from the pot of knowledge the little droplets on his thumb, the 3 drops. So Taliesin and the Welsh cultural identity is part of a much bigger picture cosmic identity. And there are shades in early Welsh Druid poetry of the books of Enoch, and that sort of cosmic atemporality, which Robert Graves then talked about, the white goddess. The seer or sage is part of this mystery cult which reveres the white goddess from all time. And that is not just something for Britain, that is a global cosmic thing. One of my favourite Welsh intellectuals was Sir William Jones, who was a Druid from West Wales. He studied as a judge, he was on the circuit of the courts of Wales. He then was invited to go to India, and he applied and got the job as head of the legal profession in India, based in Calcutta. But as a linguist, he'd been to Oxford University and studied Persian, Arabic, Greek, Latin, all the languages. Also fluent Welsh speaker. He got to India and he learned Sanskrit. He was the first European intellectual to learn Sanskrit. He had a Brahmin teaching. And he realized these languages, Latin, Greek, Welsh, Sanskrit, they're all from one family. And he coined the phrase Indo-European. He realized that there's a one big family here, all the way from like Wales to India, through Europe. And he even was a bard and poet. He wrote amazing poetry, it's never been published really, in which the Hindu gods and the Welsh gods meet and make peace in heaven. The Celtic goddess and the Indian goddesses, they're all one big family, he said. Well, he was ahead of his time, because that's where we should be coming from. Well, that's the true Welshman, who wants to live in a universal republic of enlightenment. That was John Dee's point when he became the Archmagus at the court of Elizabeth and coined the phrase the British Empire. The true project behind the British Empire was the Republic of Enlightenment. And he was talking to the angels. He worked with Trithemius, inherited his vision that each nation has its own archangel governing it. And Dee said, well, let's communicate with the archangels of these different nations. Let's do a sort of psychic research. He was one of the pioneers of parapsychology. And he went round Europe. Dee was a European intellectual who went to Austria, he went to Hungary, he was invited to Poland. Even the Tsar of Russia wanted him to come to his court in Russia. He was recognized as a pan-European thinker. He said, no, I can't come to Russia. I'm going to help, be loyal to my queen, Elizabeth. But he was a polymath, and that inspired the English Renaissance, which was part of this pan-European Renaissance. He was communicating with Mercator, and in France, William Postel was another equivalent to Dee. These people were looking for the reconciliation of Jewish, Christian, Islamic, pagan, philosophical systems. And they inspired the Rosicrucian movement, which was a pan-European thing, as Francis Yates found out, and also inspired Freemasonry, which was an attempt to kind of build a ritual procedure whereby these esoteric mysteries can be handed on. Now that's the authentic gift that Britain or Wales has to give to Europe and to the world, and it's all ultimately about peace. I think the Brexiteers are betraying that. They either don't know anything about the true esoteric history of Britain, Wales, Scotland and Ireland, as I'm expounding, which is possible. They may just be that badly educated. You see, one of my concerns is that to be a politician, you don't need to pass any tests or qualifications or exams. You don't need a license. I, as a teacher, have to be fully trained, qualified, up to date, have to pass all kinds of ethical, legal tests. I can't have been in prison, all this stuff. To be a politician, there's nothing. So these people literally could be liars, cheats, and criminals, and often they are, and they're doing dodgy deals. I think it's time to bring in a licensing system for politicians, both members of parliament and even in local councils. And I've invented the idea of a parliamentary veracity oath. They should swear to tell the truth on all matters of policy and official business. And if they lie, they lose the licenseship. If we can't trust our politicians to tell the truth, then society will gradually fall apart. So the authentic wisdom that is Welsh identity, I think, is embodied in Plaid Cymru Stan, which is pacifist and non-nuclear Wales, and they want to remain as part of the project that the European Union is, which is a peace project. They don't want to be dragged out in the name of some misunderstood and misinterpreted concept of what the British Empire is being hijacked for by these arch-capitalist neocons, So, Robert Owen, also a great Welsh spiritualist and socialist, was the first great socialist in British history. He founded the cooperative movement, and he was the equivalent of the French Saint-Simon. Robert Owen came from Welshpool, where I used to live near there. Later in his life, he got very interested in spiritualism, because he realised that we're not going to get socialism until we also get a community of spirits also, that we have to recognise the epistemological equality of each person. We have to premise it on love. That can only come from spiritual education, which is why I became an RE teacher, right? We need more RE teaching in schools. Talks like this should be, just normal for schools, sixth forms and things. And Robert Owen, even after his death, he carried on busily, because he then came to Emma Harding Britten, who was the founder of the British Spiritualist movement, and gave messages, channeled messages through, which have become the 7 principles that the spiritualist churches have throughout the country. So there was a very great Welshman who was active for peace, for brotherhood, for cooperation. He called that socialism. Now, why in the name of these hard-right American neocons? They're so badly educated, they haven't got a clue what they're talking about by destroying socialism, destroying social democracy. They've never been properly to the right schools and learned this stuff. And the Welsh can teach them. Rather than destroying and taking Britain out of the EU, what I think Britain should be doing is helping to spiritualise and ethicise the European Union and its work. And if we can have a second referendum and vote Remain, then we can get on with that work. So we come towards the end. I want to say something about wisdom now. So I've said that, to me, a metaphysical politics will be premised on the search for enlightenment and the discovery of enlightenment within the existing norms and modes that we cohere in our institutions and nations and so on. So that is a clue as to what wisdom is, right? Which I think comes about by comparing, contrasting and synthesizing all the different exceptionalist stories. And we have to sublate to the common unity of love all our different conflictual stories. So there's one, there's narratives whereby this tribe is the best, or this tribe is the worst, that suffered the most and therefore is going to get the most revenge. And whereas wisdom would be integrating and synthesizing all these separate narrative stories. And how do we do that? It has to be through transpersonal love. Now this seems to be the mission of philosophy from the very beginning. This is what Pythagoras was doing when he went to Phoenicia and sat in the Phoenician temples learning their myths and stories. He went to Babylonia and learned. He went to Greece, where he was from, and Egypt and Crete and Cyprus and elsewhere, and eventually in southern Italy. He founded the first philosophical schools. And so by comparing and contrasting all these traditions, he comes up with a common wisdom. It's what Plato was doing. It's what Spinoza was doing later, or Edward Herbert, the great Welsh philosopher, trying to find the common threads of universal truth inside all the separate stories. And that's what Jung was doing, because by examining the different archetypes that different nations come up with from the collective unconscious, we find there's a common thread running through them all. There isn't Germany's best, or Spain's best, or France's best, or England's best, or Wales's best. They're all geniuses from the collective mind, operating in, ultimately, somehow we have to calibrate it so that they operate in harmony. Now this to me is symbolised by the European Union flag. The stars, the gold stars on a blue background. The circle, no one is preeminent, each has its own stories and its narratives. When we fail to agree on a common narrative, we go into civil war, as happened tragically in Ukraine, and has happened in Syria or Yemen, and as is happening in other countries. I think we need a wisdom service, not an intelligence service in Europe. Europeans are saying, should we have an intelligence service? The last thing we want is a sort of European Union CIA type thing. That's what's causing the trouble. I think the European Union has been targeted and attacked by American intelligence and probably by Russian. Probably now even by British. I think British intelligence has been hijacked by the cabal of Brexiteers around May, and they're misusing British intelligence and equating Brexit loyalty with, with their own kind of hijacking of the narrative. I would say true intelligence is about wisdom, and it's about peace. And so what we should be working for is a commonalisation of the narratives of exceptionalism in a way that works for everybody. Okay, so coming towards the end, I want to just sum up what I think is the problem. And I'm going to put this forward in a grammatical way. As a philosopher of language, I'm going to say that the cause of all these problems, exceptionalism and neo-nationalism, is summed up in the word only. We're up against the problem of the onlys, and this is going back to the question of metaphysical dualism that I talked about at the beginning. When you have onlys, you have dualism. And at the base of a lot of these conflicts, and Brexit, but also others, is the problem of the onlys. And this, an only means a scarcity, it means a hurry up, it means panic. There's only 5 minutes left, or whatever. So, what are the onlys? Okay, well, one of them is there's only one chosen people. This is exoteric Judaism, which has caused a lot of people a lot of problems over the years. Or there's only one God. That's simplistic monotheism. And the problem with that is, well, what if you've got 4 or 5 people each claiming to be the only God? Or then there's only one Son of God. That's the Orthodox Christian position. Only ever one Son of God. Then there's only one Messiah. That's Judeo-Christianity. That's, you know. And then they argue, who is that only one Messiah? And then Islam comes along and says there's only one last prophet. It's all only. And now Brexitism and USAism and Trumpism is a secularized version of this. There's only one nation. There's only one Great Britain. There's only one Great America. And the others are all excluded. The horrible Europeans, they're not in the only best nation. Those horrible Hispanics that are trying to come in from Mexico, they're excluded. The immigrants, etc. So it's, at bottom it's a metaphysical exceptionalism. And it's interesting that what we're getting is we're getting alliances of right-wing exceptionists, only-based people. So the Saudis, who are the most extreme of all the only one last prophet people, are now in alliance with the Trump only one great America, with the Brexiteers only one Great Britain, because Theresa May is always going off to Saudi Arabia, and even, paradoxically, with Netanyahu and the only one great Zionist Israel, and everyone else is, you know, for the chop if you're not with us. And there's this weird alliance going on of these onlys. And if you come in the way of them, well then, God forbid, you end up like Khashoggi, literally cut up in the Turkish Saudi Arabian embassy, because you're not part, you're saying every, right? And so what's the antidote to the onlys? Well, so the antidote has to be grammatical. I'm a philosopher only. I'm saying the antidote is the every. So every people is chosen. There's not just only one chosen people, every people is chosen. The people of Orkney, the people of Wales, the people of Spain, the people of Portugal, the people of Israel, the people of Palestine, the people of Africa, of China. Every people is sacred. We have to get that idea out. And every nation has its sacred stories, its exoduses, its prophets. And the Druid teachings of the Celts, you know, they're as valid as any other prophetic lineages. And everyone is a son and daughter of God in different ways. So everyone is sacred. It's not just only this or that is the son of God. I mean, everyone is a son and daughter of God in different ways. And we need an education system that teaches people to access that, to realize that. We need a social system that gives people pride, doesn't humiliate people, a benefit system that doesn't make people starve to death, literally, or have to choose between eating a sandwich and heating them for the night. This is humiliating people. And it's premised on the onlys. There's not enough. Only some people can have it, which is the economic only, the scarcity model of fear-based capitalism that we have to challenge with an everyone should have enough model, which is some kind of socialism or social democracy. And I would go further, I'd say everyone is a potential messiah in this or some other lifetime. We're all messiahs in training here. You know, there's enough workshops going on to learning to be a good messiah, and everybody is a potential Messiah. So it's time we insisted on our political so-called elites, who are so incompetent it's just a joke. They need to do some training courses. That's why I did courses in the House of Lords. I thought, we could gradually train them up. House of Lords are fine. They're quite clever. It's the Commons people. Literally, they have no training, no qualifications, and no education. And they have huge amounts of arrogance and hubris. And hubris, as Herodotus said, is what brings down empires. Hubris is the thing to avoid. Behind Brexit, I smell the cordite of hubris, you see. And that's the problem. So everyone is a potential Messiah. We need a system that trains people to realise that. Every god and goddess is the only real god and goddess. So every tribe and all its gods and goddesses, actually all of them are God. We don't have to fight over whose god is the best or whose goddess. This is premised on what I call the Druid paradoxical simultaneity argument, which is backed up by quantum theory and quantum resonance and so on. Paradoxical simultaneity is that things can be different but also the same. They're in touch faster than light. The Hindu and Buddhist metaphysics call this Indra's net. So each node on the net reflects all the other nodes. So every god is the god, and every goddess is the goddess, because in a holographic universe, every part contains the whole. And this is in the Kabbalah, it's in esoteric Judaism. If you actually read the Bible properly, using Kabbalah as Blavatsky did, and Theosophists do, then you realise that. It's encoded in there. And this is the most orthodox thing. This is the paradox. People that say, oh, this is all esoteric heresy. No, this is orthodox wisdom teachings. Yes, because what it's saying is it's a kind of universalist pantheism or panentheism. God is inside all the gods. So it's every, not only. Also, every good prophet is by definition the last prophet, because they say everything. And so what more is there to say than the last prophet? However, there's always going to be another prophet coming along, because it's an infinite supply of waves of prophecy and prophethood. So people who are training with the different Druid groups or the prophetic schools around the planet, learning clairvoyance, learning to elevate their wisdom to a higher plane, they will, 50 years, 100 years from now, they'll be running the Theosophical Society, their day or the equivalent. They'll be having talks like this. They'll be having to cope with whatever ignorance people have dreamed up then. So every last prophet is the last prophet. Because there's no shortage of wisdom. If we get rid of this idea of scarcity and shortage of wisdom, then there's an infinite supply. And I would say that we therefore, if we accept that, we have an infinite supply of wisdom to beat the Brexit thing. If we define Brexit as a kind of metaphysical error, as I've done, as I've shown, I hope, then we can draw on the infinite supply of wisdom, Sophia, to defeat it. And with love, because we just have to defeat that ignorance. If Theresa May and Irina Cabal listened to this talk and actually understood it, if they realised what they've been ignoring, i.e. Scottish independence, and the fact that, hey, Scotland wants to remain in the European Union, or Northern Ireland wants to remain in the Union, if the penny began to drop, then the ignorance goes away through recognition. So, and then finally, yes, the thing about European metaphysics that I just want to end on, which I love so much, is that every many is the one, and also every one is the many. And this was the core insight that gave us European civilization and Plato's teaching. So the one, the absolute, is also there in the manyness. And so that's why Plato was comfortable with stories of the different gods and the ideas, what he called ideas, like love, justice, truth, kindness, beauty. They're all reflections of the one, which is the source. And each of them carries the energy of that one. Now, to me, that's what Europe stands for as a civilization. each European culture, and this was the discovery of the Renaissance, when in Florence they retranslated Plato and Ficino and Pico del Mirandola got Platonic writings in circulation to France and England. They rediscovered this, that the genius of Europe is in a sense, its classical pagan heritage, where the many can be celebrated. So the beauty of form, the beautiful paintings of Leonardo and Raphael, beautiful goddesses, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas an iconoclastic culture, which doesn't understand the many and is in love with the one, fine, but it wants to smash everything of beauty. So when Taliban and ISIL take over Palmyra, they smash everything because they're sculptures. Europe understands that the pagan classical form of beauty was a manifestation of the one. And that's what Hegel points out in his aesthetics, at his study of the history of art. It's so important. That's what Europe has given to the world. And we should let it not be destroyed by these vulgar, to me they're idolaters, they're iconoclasts, who are trying to destroy that European civilization of which Britain is a core part, in the name of their dualistic political absolutisms. But anyway, there we are. That's what I'm arguing for, a sort of metaphysical look at Brexit, and the realization that we have to activate the wisdom channels to combat it. And I thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed my little talk.